Picture this. You have worked for 40 years. You have paid your taxes, raised your family, done everything you were supposed to do. And now you are 67 years old, and the retirement you imagined, the travel, the freedom, the ability to live on your own terms is not quite what you ended up with. Instead, you are living on around $1,100 a fortnight from the age pension. That is roughly $26,000 a year. In a country where the average weekly grocery bill, rent in most cities, and basic utilities alone can consume most of that, you are not retired. You are just surviving with a different label. This is not a horror story about a handful of unlucky people. This is the projected reality for the majority of Australians currently in the workforce. And the reason most people do not see it coming is not because they are irresponsible or careless. It is because they trusted a system, employer super contributions, the age pension, time, without ever checking whether that system was actually going to be enough. This video is about what enough actually looks like, and more importantly, what you can do right now, regardless of your age or income, to make sure you are on the right side of that equation. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly why the default retirement path in Australia leaves most people short, what a genuinely comfortable retirement actually requires in real numbers, and the specific steps that separate the Australians who retire with freedom from the ones who retire with just enough to get by. This is not about becoming an investment expert or sacrificing your entire present life for your future one. It is about making a small number of the right decisions at the right time and understanding why those decisions matter so much more than most people realize until it is too late. The good news is that the gap between a comfortable retirement and a dependent one is not as wide as it feels from where most people are standing. But it has to be addressed while time is still doing the heavy lifting for you, and that window is shorter than you think. Most Australians have a vague plan for retirement. It usually sounds something like this. Work hard, let employer contributions build up the super, maybe pay off the house and figure out the rest when the time comes. That plan feels reasonable. It feels responsible even. And for a generation or two, it was close enough to work. But the cost of living in Australia has shifted dramatically. Property prices have made home ownership harder to reach and more expensive to maintain. The age pension has not kept pace with real living costs. And the superannuation system, while genuinely valuable, was never designed to be the only thing standing between a working Australian and a comfortable retirement. The people who are thriving in retirement right now did not just work harder than everyone else. They asked better questions earlier. They looked at the numbers honestly, and they built things alongside their super, investments, income streams, habits that meant they were not depending on a single pool of money to fund 20 or 30 years of life. That is what this channel is about, asking better questions, getting honest answers, and turning that clarity into simple, practical action. Before we get into the specific steps, I want to plant something in your mind that we will come back to later. Because there is one number, one specific target, that changes the entire retirement conversation once you understand it. And most Australians have never heard it framed this way. Keep watching. Let us start with the honest numbers. The Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia estimates that a comfortable retirement for a single Australian requires around $52,000 per year. For a couple, it is closer to $73,000. These figures account for reasonable housing costs, healthcare, occasional travel, and a lifestyle that does not require counting every dollar. The age pension for a single person sits at roughly $26,000 annually. That is almost exactly half of what is considered comfortable for a single retiree, which means if the age pension is your primary income in retirement, you are starting from a position that is already $26,000 short of where you want to be. Most people hear this and assume the solution is simply to save more into super. And while that is part of it, it misses the deeper problem. The real issue is that most Australians are building their retirement on a single foundation, superannuation, with no other structure underneath it. What people think super does is carry them all the way through retirement. What it actually does for the average Australian is provide a pool of money that needs to stretch across 20 to 30 years of living expenses while also managing investment risk, inflation, and unexpected health costs. The action step here is not complicated, but it is urgent. Log into your superannuation account this week, not to obsess over it, just to look. Check your current balance. Check your fund's historical returns. And check what your projected retirement balance will be at your current contribution rate. Most super funds have a projection tool built into their member portal. Look at that number honestly, then ask yourself whether it is actually enough. The second thing most Australians get wrong about retirement is assuming that super contributions alone will bridge the gap. Here is the reality of how compound growth actually works, and why starting early matters more than contributing large amounts later. If you are 30 years old and you start contributing an extra $200 per month into a diversified investment outside of super, and that investment grows at an average of 7% annually, by the time you reach 65, you will have accumulated roughly around $350,000 on top of your super, $200 a month, the price of a few dinners out. If you wait until you are 45 to start the same $200 per month at the same return, you reach 65 with around $100,000. Same contribution, same return, but 15 fewer years of compounding. The difference is $250,000, and it costs you nothing except time. This is why the people who retire comfortably are not always the highest earners. They are the ones who started building something alongside their super early, even small amounts, and let time do what it does. The tool that most Australians use for this is index fund ETFs, a simple, low-cost, diversified investment that tracks the broad market, requires no stock-picking skill, and can be started with as little as $100. Set up an automatic monthly contribution. Choose a broad market fund and leave it alone for decades. That is the structure. The action step here is to open a brokerage account this week if you do not already have one. In Australia, platforms like CommSec, Stake, or Perler make this straightforward. You do not need to invest a large amount to start. You just need to start. Now here is the part that surprises most people, and this is the rehook I promised you at the start. The number that changes the retirement conversation is $600,000. Using the 4% rule, a widely used financial planning principle that suggests withdrawing 4% of your portfolio annually is sustainable over a 30-year retirement. A portfolio of $600,000 outside of super generates $24,000 per year in withdrawals. Add the age pension of $26,000 and you are sitting at $50,000 annually, right at the threshold of what the research defines as a comfortable single retirement. $600,000 sounds like a large number. But here is the thing. You do not need to save $600,000. You need to invest consistently enough that compound growth builds it for you over time. And for someone starting in their 30s with a disciplined monthly investment habit, that number is genuinely achievable, not as a fantasy, but as a mathematical outcome of time and consistency. The mistake most Australians make is thinking that retirement planning is about how much they can set aside from a salary. What it is actually about is how early they start letting growth do the work. Here is the most common mistake in Australian retirement thinking, and it is one that costs people decades of progress without them ever realizing it. Most people treat their superannuation as a passive account that manages itself. They trust that their employer is putting money in, that the fund is investing it reasonably, and that everything will work out in the end. They never check the fund's performance against comparable funds. They never review their investment option, whether they are in a conservative, balanced, or growth allocation. And they never consider whether their funds' fees are quietly eating into returns, year after year. Here is the uncomfortable truth. A difference of 1% in annual fees on a superannuation balance of $300,000 costs you roughly $100,000 over 20 years in lost compound growth. 1%. It sounds like nothing. Over 2 decades, it is a significant portion of your retirement. The aha moment here is this. Your superannuation is not a set-and-forget account. It is the largest investment most Australians will ever make, and most people give it less attention than they give their phone plan. The action step is simple. Compare your super fund on the government's Your Super comparison tool at moneysmart.gov.au. Check your fund's fees and 10-year return, performance against comparable funds in the same category. If your fund is consistently underperforming and charging high fees, switching takes less than 15 minutes and can add tens of thousands of dollars to your Retirement balance over time. Now for the final idea, and this one genuinely challenges the way most Australians think about what retirement needs to look like. One of the most powerful shifts happening right now among Australians approaching retirement is a rethinking of where retirement happens, not just how it is funded. The age pension is portable. If you meet the residency requirements and apply before leaving Australia, you can receive your age pension while living overseas. And in countries like Thailand, Malaysia, Vietnam, and Bali, destinations with established expat communities, good healthcare infrastructure, and significantly lower costs of living, that same $26,000 per year goes dramatically further. A comfortable lifestyle in Chiang Mai, Thailand can cost between 22 and 3,900 Australian dollars per month. In Bali, between 15 and 2,500. In Vietnam or the Philippines, as low as $10 to $1,800 per month. For many Australians, the age pension alone, the payment they already qualify for, is enough to live comfortably in these destinations without touching a dollar of their super. This is not a suggestion that everyone should retire overseas. It is a demonstration of a more important principle. The retirement equation has two sides. Most people only focus on one, how much money they can accumulate. But the other side, how much lifestyle their money can actually buy, is equally powerful. And understanding both sides gives you options that most Australians never consider. Whether you retire in Australia or abroad, the principle is the same. Build multiple streams, start early, understand your numbers, and give yourself options before the window closes. So here is what the exception looks like. And the exception is available to far more Australians than currently believe it. The Australians who retire comfortably are not the ones who earned the most. They are the ones who checked their super funds, performance instead of assuming it was fine. Who started an investment account in their 30s instead of waiting until they felt ready. Who understood the 4% rule and worked backward from the number they actually needed. Who built a second stream of income alongside their super, even slowly, even modestly, and let time turn it into something significant. None of those things require a financial degree. None of them require earning six figures. They require clarity, consistency, and the decision to start before the compound growth window narrows. You are watching this video, which means you are asking better questions than most people at your stage. That alone puts you ahead of the curve. The next step is simple. Check your super this week. Open an investment account if you do not have one. Pick a broad market ETF and set up a small automatic monthly contribution. And look honestly at the number your current path is pointing toward. Then decide if that is the retirement you actually want. The gap between where most Australians end up and where you want to be is not as wide as it looks, but it only stays closable for so long. Start now. Your future self is depending on the decisions you make today. If this video gave you a clearer picture of what retirement actually requires and how to get there, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more honest, practical financial content built for real Australian life. There is a lot more to come.